Northern France, August 1944. A German artillery position overlooking the Allied advance from Normandy. 12 massive howitzers concealed in a carefully camouflaged forest clearing, protected by machine gun nests, barbed wire, and constant patrols. The position had held for 3 weeks, raining shells on American forces trying to break through German defensive lines. Allied intelligence needed the exact coordinates of those guns. Aerial reconnaissance showed the general area, but the heavy forest canopy made pinpointing individual artillery pieces impossible. Ground reconnaissance had failed twice. German patrols captured infiltrators before they could get close enough to observe. What the Germans didn't know was that a British commando, Lieutenant James Hartley, a Royal Marine sniper, had been watching their artillery position for 6 days. Not from the forest perimeter, not from a concealed trench. He was sitting inside a hollow tree stump less than 50 meters from the nearest gun emplacement. The stump stood at the edge of the clearing, exactly where a real tree had been felled during the position's construction. It looked perfectly natural, weathered bark, realistic texture, slightly rotted at the base like any dead tree trunk. German soldiers walked past it dozens of times daily. One soldier even sat on it during breaks, smoking cigarettes within arm's reach of where Hartley crouched silently inside. For 6 days, Hartley observed firing patterns, counted ammunition supplies, mapped crew positions, and radioed precise coordinates to Allied artillery. On the 7th morning, American counter-battery fire obliterated the German position in a devastating barrage. All 12 howitzers were destroyed. The Germans never understood how the Americans knew their exact positions. The tree stump remained undiscovered. Hartley waited until nightfall, crawled out, and withdrew through German lines to safety. The stump itself stayed in place for another 3 weeks before advancing American troops found it, opened the concealed hatch, and realized they'd captured one of the strangest reconnaissance devices ever created. This is the story of the observation tree, the fake tree stump that let British commandos hide in plain sight right inside enemy positions, observing and reporting without ever being detected. Let's rewind to 1915. Yes, 1915, World War I, not World War II.
Because the observation tree story begins in the trenches of the Western Front, where French and British forces faced a critical reconnaissance problem. The static nature of trench warfare meant that positions barely moved for months or years. Both sides needed to observe enemy positions, but any soldier who raised his head above the parapet risked instant death from snipers. Periscopes helped, but provided limited fields of view. Traditional observation posts, elevated positions, church steeples, buildings were obvious targets for artillery. French military engineers developed an ingenious solution: fake trees. They'd study no man's land through periscopes, identify a dead or damaged tree in a useful position between the lines, then craft a steel replica of that specific tree. During a quiet night, engineers would cut down the real tree and quickly install the fake one in exactly the same position. Inside the hollow steel trunk sat an observer with a small opening providing a view toward enemy lines. From the outside, the fake tree looked identical to the original. Same height, same branch pattern, same damage. German soldiers who'd grown accustomed to seeing that particular tree standing in no man's land didn't notice it had been replaced. This World War I innovation worked brilliantly. Both sides eventually employed fake observation trees, playing a strange game where trees mysteriously disappeared and reappeared, each side knowing the other was doing it, but rarely able to pinpoint which trees were fake. By 1939, when World War II began, observation tree technology had been largely forgotten. Warfare had become mobile, making static observation posts less relevant. But the special operations executive, always searching for unconventional solutions, revisited the concept and revolutionized it. Station 9, in collaboration with skilled artisans and theatrical set designers, developed observation trees so realistic that they could be placed inside enemy camps, fortifications, and defensive positions without detection. Not between the lines like World War I, but right in the enemy's backyard. The key innovation? Instead of steel tubes that looked vaguely tree-like from a distance, Station 9 created perfect replicas using lightweight materials, realistic texturing, and attention to detail that would satisfy a Hollywood film director. Creating a convincing fake tree required solving multiple engineering and artistic challenges simultaneously.
Visually identical to real trees in the target area. Not just tree-shaped, but specifically matching local flora, weathering patterns, and natural damage. Structurally sound enough to support a human observer for extended periods, sometimes days or weeks. Lightweight enough to transport and install quickly, ideally by a small team in darkness. Weatherproof to survive rain, wind, and temperature variations without degrading in ways that would reveal the deception. Internally spacious enough for an observer plus equipment, radio, binoculars, weapons, water, and supplies for multi-day operations. Station 9's process began with intelligence gathering. Aerial reconnaissance photos identified potential observation positions, clearings, road junctions, artillery emplacements, supply depots. Analysts would study these photos carefully, looking for dead tree stumps, fallen logs, or damaged trees in useful locations. Once a target stump was identified, Station 9's artisans went to work. The frame, built from lightweight metal tubing or wooden supports, the internal frame provided structural strength. The frame included a small seat or platform where the observer would crouch or sit, positioned to align with viewing ports. The shell. This was where artistry met engineering. The outer shell was crafted from lightweight materials, papier-mâché, reinforced with burlap and wire mesh, then coated with waterproofing compounds. Layer by layer, artisans built up the exterior to match the target tree's dimensions and shape. The texture. Real tree bark has incredible detail: ridges, cracks, holes, moss growth, weathering patterns. Station 9's team included sculptors who painstakingly recreated these details using plaster, paint, and natural materials. Some fake stumps incorporated actual pieces of bark attached to the exterior for ultimate realism. Coloration. Paint alone wasn't enough, it looked artificial. The team used multiple techniques: staining, weathering with chemicals, applying dirt and moss, even burning sections slightly to simulate decay. The goal was to match not just the color, but the subtle variations in tone that natural wood displays. Interior modifications. Inside the hollow stump, the observer needed viewing ports disguised as natural holes or cracks in the wood, ventilation to prevent suffocation during extended stays, concealed entrance at the base, carefully hidden and opened from inside, storage compartments for supplies, radio equipment, and weapons, sound-deadening materials to prevent noise from inside betraying the observer's presence. The construction process took weeks for each tree. These weren't mass-produced items. Each was a custom-built prop designed for a specific mission at a specific location. You won't believe how commandos practiced operating inside these claustrophobic observation posts. Training for observation tree operations took place at SOE facilities in Scotland and southern England. The training was as much psychological as technical, because spending days inside a cramped, dark, hollow tree stump while enemy soldiers walked past required extraordinary mental discipline. Claustrophobia management. Trainees first spent increasing periods inside mock observation trees to identify those who couldn't handle the confinement. Some candidates washed out immediately. Panic attacks inside the stump disqualified them permanently. Those who succeeded learned breathing techniques, mental focus exercises, and how to manage the psychological stress of extreme confinement. Stillness training.
Inside an observation tree, any movement could betray your presence. A cough, a sneeze, shifting position that made the stump rock slightly, any of these could alert nearby enemy soldiers. Trainees practiced absolute stillness for hours, learning to control involuntary movements, suppress coughs, and remain motionless even when insects crawled across their skin. Silent observation. Using binoculars in near darkness through a tiny viewing port required practice. Trainees learned to observe systematically, memorize details, and take notes silently. They practice identifying vehicles, counting soldiers, estimating distances, all while remaining completely still and silent. Radio discipline. Communication from inside the tree required whisper-quiet operation. Trainees learned to assemble radio equipment silently, transmit at minimum volume, and disassemble everything without making noise. They practiced Morse code extensively. Voice transmission was too risky, so most communication was via coded radio bursts. Emergency procedures. What if the tree was discovered? Trainees learned escape procedures, how to quickly exit the stump, armed defense techniques in confined spaces, and evasion tactics. The reality was grim. If Germans discovered you inside a fake tree, survival was unlikely. But training provided some protocols for desperate situations. Training challenges. Final training included 72-hour exercises inside observation trees placed in mock enemy camps. Instructors playing German soldiers would patrol past, occasionally stopping to examine the tree, test whether trainees could maintain composure under direct scrutiny. Many candidates failed these final tests. The psychological pressure was immense. Those who passed received their assignments, specific observation missions in occupied Europe, often involving insertion by parachute near the target area, followed by covert installation of the fake tree and extended observation periods. Installing a fake observation tree inside enemy territory required meticulous planning and flawless execution. The basic procedure: Phase 1, Reconnaissance. Weeks before the mission, intelligence officers studied aerial photos and agent reports to identify the perfect location. The ideal spot was a recently cleared area where Germans had felled trees during construction, places where a stump would look natural rather than suspicious. Phase 2, Tree Construction. Station 9 built a fake stump matching the target location's characteristics. If the area had oak trees, they built an oak stump. If local stumps showed specific weathering or damage patterns, those were replicated exactly. Phase 3, Transportation. The fake tree was disassembled into sections light enough for parachute drops or overland transport. A complete tree typically broke down into 4 to 6 pieces that could be carried by a small team. Phase 4, Insertion. The commando team, usually 2 to 4 operators, would infiltrate near the target area via parachute drop, submarine landing, or overland infiltration through resistance networks. Phase 5, Installation. This was the most dangerous phase. Under cover of darkness, the team would move to the target location, quickly assemble the fake tree, and install it in the pre-selected position. If a real stump already existed in the right spot, perfect. They'd built the fake to match its dimensions and would simply place it over the real stump. If not, they'd dig a shallow foundation, secure the fake stump, and camouflage the installation site. Installation had to be completed in one night, ideally 2 to 3 hours maximum. Longer than that risked dawn exposure or German patrol discovery. Speed was critical. Phase 6, Observer Insertion. One commando, usually the most experienced, would enter the tree while the rest of the team provided security. Once inside, the observer was committed. The entrance hatch was carefully concealed from outside and could only be opened from within. Extraction would happen days or weeks later. Phase 7, Team Withdrawal. The insertion team withdrew, leaving the observer alone inside the fake tree. From this point, the observer was entirely self-sufficient, armed with supplies for the planned observation duration. The psychological isolation was profound. You were sitting inside a hollow fake tree, inside an enemy military position, surrounded by German soldiers, unable to move, unable to communicate except via radio, knowing that discovery meant certain death. And some missions lasted 2 weeks or more. Declassified files reveal several observation tree operations, though many details remain classified even today. Operation Woodpecker, France, 1944. The mission described in our opening. Lieutenant Hartley observed German artillery for 6 days, providing targeting data that enabled devastating counter-battery fire. His observation tree survived the subsequent battle and was recovered intact by American forces advancing through the area. Operation Birch, Belgium, 1944. A fake tree observation post was installed overlooking a German tank assembly area near Bastogne. The observer, name still classified, spent 11 days inside the tree, counting tanks, identifying unit markings, and reporting movement patterns. This intelligence helped Allied commanders understand German strength and disposition during the Battle of the Bulge. Operation Pine, Norway, 1943. British commandos installed an observation tree near a German airfield in occupied Norway. The observer monitored aircraft movements for 2 weeks, identifying squadron types, counting sorties, and reporting maintenance schedules. This intelligence supported RAF bombing raids that destroyed a significant portion of the Luftwaffe's northern fighter strength. The failed Operation Holland, 1944. Not all missions succeeded. One observation tree installation in Holland was discovered when German engineers decided to clear stumps from a defensive position. They attempted to pull the fake stump with a truck, discovered it wasn't rooted, and investigated. The commando inside attempted to escape but was captured and executed after interrogation. This failure led to revised protocols. Observation trees were only placed in areas where stump removal was unlikely. But perhaps the most extraordinary use of observation trees wasn't during combat. It was during the post-D-Day advance across France. As Allied forces pushed German units back, they'd occasionally overrun positions and discover fake trees the Germans had installed for their own observation purposes. Both sides were using the same technique, often in the same areas, creating strange scenarios where fake trees watched other fake trees. In one documented case near Caen, American forces found 2 observation trees, one British, one German, positioned within sight of each other, both facing the same road junction. Neither observer had known the other fake tree existed. When Americans opened both stumps, they found the observers had been watching each other's positions without realizing they were mutual counterfeits. By mid-1944, the Germans had become aware of Allied observation trees. Several factors contributed to this discovery. Captured equipment. When German forces overran Allied positions during the Battle of the Bulge, they discovered abandoned observation trees. Technical analysis revealed the construction methods and purpose. Interrogation. Captured commandos under interrogation sometimes revealed information about observation tree operations. While most agents resisted, some broke under torture and provided details that helped German counterintelligence. Pattern recognition. German intelligence officers noticed patterns. Artillery strikes that seemed impossibly accurate. Ambushes that suggested precise intelligence about patrol routes. Attacks timed perfectly to exploit vulnerable moments. These patterns suggested observation posts in positions where no traditional posts existed. Once aware, the Germans implemented countermeasures. Stump removal. German engineering units began systematically clearing tree stumps from defensive areas, particularly near sensitive installations like artillery positions and supply depots. This created problems for observation tree operations. The obvious locations for fake trees were being eliminated. Inspection protocols. German soldiers were instructed to examine tree stumps for signs of artificial construction. They'd kick stumps, strike them with rifle butts, probe them with bayonets, looking for hollow sections or non-wood materials. Controlled burns. Some German units set fire to dead trees and stumps in defensive areas, reasoning that real wood would burn while fake trees might not.
This worked occasionally. Some observation trees' waterproofing compounds resisted burning in ways natural wood didn't, revealing their artificial nature. Attack dogs. German security forces occasionally used patrol dogs in sensitive areas. Dogs could detect human scent emanating from observation trees, though this method was unreliable. Wind direction, rain, and the observer's scent control measures affected success rates. Despite these countermeasures, observation trees continued to function throughout the war's final year. The Germans simply couldn't check every stump in every area, and Station 9 constantly improved construction techniques to defeat new detection methods. The cat-and-mouse game continued until Germany's surrender in May 1945. Observation tree operations faced severe limitations that prevented them from becoming widespread. Weather vulnerability. Extended rain could degrade the tree's exterior, causing paint to run or waterproofing to fail. Extreme heat made the interior unbearably hot. Observers sometimes suffered heat stroke inside their stumps. Cold weather created condensation problems. The observer's breath would freeze inside the stump, creating ice formations visible through viewing ports. Attack dogs. German security forces occasionally used patrol dogs in sensitive areas. Dogs could detect human scent emanating from observation trees, though this method was unreliable. Wind direction, rain, and the observer's scent control measures affected success rates. Despite these countermeasures, observation trees continued to function throughout the war's final year. The Germans simply couldn't check every stump in every area, and Station 9 constantly improved construction techniques to defeat new detection methods. The cat-and-mouse game continued until Germany's surrender in May 1945. Observation tree operations faced severe limitations that prevented them from becoming widespread. Weather vulnerability. Extended rain could degrade the tree's exterior, causing paint to run or waterproofing to fail. Extreme heat made the interior unbearably hot. Observers sometimes suffered heat stroke inside their stumps. Cold weather created condensation problems. The observer's breath would freeze inside the stump, creating ice formations visible through viewing ports. Limited mobility. Once inside, the observer was trapped. If the situation changed, if German forces moved away from the observation area, making the post useless, or if they moved closer, making discovery likely, the observer couldn't relocate. The mission either continued as planned or was aborted, with the observer attempting dangerous extraction. Sanitation issues. Spending days or weeks in confinement created biological problems. Observers carried minimal food and water to reduce waste, but human waste still had to be managed, usually via sealed containers that were buried after extraction. The smell inside observation trees was reportedly horrific by the end of multi-day missions. Physical degradation. Remaining in cramped positions for extended periods caused severe physical problems. Muscle cramps, circulation issues, joint stiffness. Observers often needed assistance to walk after extraction. Some suffered long-term physical damage from extended confinement. Psychological trauma. The isolation, confinement, constant danger, and inability to move or defend yourself created profound psychological stress. Post-war studies of observation tree operators showed high rates of PTSD, claustrophobia, and anxiety disorders. Mission abort challenges. If an observer needed emergency extraction, medical emergency, imminent discovery, equipment failure, there was often no safe way to extract them quickly. Several observers died inside their trees from medical emergencies because extraction was impossible without compromising security. Limited operational windows. Observation trees worked best during active combat operations when the intelligence they provided had immediate value. During static periods or lulls in fighting, the risk-to-benefit ratio made the missions less attractive. Despite these severe limitations, every observation tree mission that successfully gathered intelligence was considered worth the risks and costs. The tactical value of having eyes inside enemy positions outweighed the dangers. The observation tree concept inspired similar disguises using different objects. Haystacks. In agricultural areas, Station 9 created fake haystacks with hollow interiors. These were easier to construct than trees, but more suspicious. Haystacks that never moved or degraded attracted attention. Rock piles.
In mountainous regions, observers hid inside carefully constructed fake rock formations. These required extensive local material knowledge. Using the wrong type of stone would immediately reveal the fake. Ruins. In bombed-out cities and villages, observers concealed themselves inside artificial rubble piles or fake structural remains. This worked well in urban warfare environments where genuine ruins were everywhere. Animal carcasses. The most bizarre variant involved hollowing out dead livestock and creating observation posts inside. These were rarely used, the smell was unbearable, and the carcasses degraded quickly. But a few missions employed this extreme camouflage. Wrecked vehicles. Fake destroyed vehicles, burnt-out trucks, damaged tanks provided observation posts in mechanized warfare zones. These had the advantage of being metal, requiring less maintenance than organic disguises.
None of these variants achieved a success rate of observation trees. Trees were simply the perfect combination of ubiquity, stability, and natural variation that made each fake unique and difficult to identify. After 1945, observation tree techniques continued in various conflicts. Korean War. Both UN and Chinese forces used observation posts disguised as damaged trees in forested areas. The technology had spread. Both sides knew the technique and employed it. Vietnam War. American Special Forces used fake trees for observation posts in jungle environments, though the dense vegetation made these less necessary than in European forests. The Viet Cong also employed similar techniques, creating a strange mirror of World War I's mutual observation tree deployments. Middle Eastern conflicts. Israeli and Arab forces used observation posts disguised as rocks, ruins, and vegetation in various conflicts. The fundamental principle, hide in plain sight using perfect camouflage, remained valid across different environments. Modern applications. Contemporary military forces still use elaborate camouflage for observation posts, though technology has changed the specifics. Thermal imaging, motion sensors, and drone surveillance have made simple physical camouflage less effective. Modern observation posts incorporate electronic countermeasures and advanced materials that defeat multiple detection methods simultaneously. Museum exhibits. Several World War II-era observation trees survive in museums. The Imperial War Museum in London displays a section of an observation tree cut away to show the interior construction. Visitors are often surprised by how cramped the interior space is. The physical dimensions make the psychological challenge of extended occupation immediately apparent. Training legacy. Modern special forces still train for extended surveillance operations in confined spaces, though usually not in fake trees. The psychological training, managing claustrophobia, maintaining stillness, observing systematically, remains relevant for contemporary covert operations. Behind the technical specifications and operational successes were human beings who spent days or weeks inside hollow fake trees, alone, cramped, constantly terrified of discovery. Post-war interviews with surviving observation tree operators reveal common experiences. The first night. Nearly every operator described the first night inside the tree as the worst. The reality of the confinement set in. Every sound seemed impossibly loud. Every German voice nearby sounded like discovery. The urge to open the hatch and escape was overwhelming. Those who survived past the first night described a strange psychological adaptation. The tree became their world. They developed routines, observation schedules, radio contact times, careful rationing of food and water. The exterior world, the one where German soldiers walked past, became almost abstract. Near discoveries. Multiple operators reported moments when German soldiers examined their tree directly, kicking it, striking it with rifle butts, even sitting on it. These moments required absolute stillness and nerve control. One operator described a German soldier urinating on his observation tree while he crouched inside, frozen in terror that any movement would give him away. The silence. Extended periods of absolute silence, unable to speak or make noise, created profound psychological effects. Some operators reported auditory hallucinations. Others described losing track of time completely, unsure if hours or days had passed. Extraction relief. The moment of extraction, when friendly forces opened the tree and the operator could finally emerge, was consistently described as one of the most profound relief experiences of their lives. Several operators wept openly upon extraction, overcome by the release of accumulated stress. Long-term effects. Many observation tree operators suffered lasting claustrophobia. Confined spaces, elevators, small rooms, tight crowds triggered anxiety attacks decades after the war. Some refused to discuss their experiences until late in life, finding the memories too psychologically difficult to process. The observation tree never became famous. It's not in history books' main narratives. Most World War II documentaries never mention it. The weapon is too strange, too theatrical, too difficult to fit into conventional warfare stories. But for the commandos who used them and the operations they supported, observation trees represented the ultimate in covert surveillance. They proved that perfect camouflage, indistinguishable from reality, could put Allied eyes inside German positions without detection. The trees succeeded because they exploited a fundamental human weakness. We see what we expect to see. They walked past them daily, sat on them during breaks, used them as landmarks. They never imagined those stumps might be hollow, might contain enemy observers, might be fake. Station 9's artisans and engineers created something remarkable. Observation posts so perfectly disguised that they were invisible through camouflage rather than concealment. Not hidden behind things, but hiding by being things. The observation tree didn't win the war, but it provided tactical intelligence that saved Allied lives, enabled more accurate artillery strikes, and gave commanders knowledge that improved decision-making. Each successful observation tree mission represented intelligence gathered at enormous risk by men who volunteered to spend days inside cramped darkness, surrounded by enemies, unable to move or defend themselves. So why did this fake British tree stump hide commandos right in enemy camps? Because British engineers made the impossible realistic. Because commandos had the courage to climb inside and stay there. Because psychological warfare includes making your enemies doubt their own eyes. The Germans never solved the observation tree problem. They knew fake trees existed. They searched for them. They destroyed suspicious stumps. But they couldn't find them all, because the best fake trees were indistinguishable from real ones. And in warfare, the perfect disguise is the one that makes your enemies question reality itself. When a German soldier kicked a stump to test if it was real, heard the solid thunk of wood, and walked away satisfied, never knowing a British commando crouched inside, heart pounding, 1 meter away, the observation tree had achieved its purpose. Perfect camouflage, perfect concealment, perfect invisibility through being perfectly visible. That was the genius of the fake tree stump. It hid commandos by not hiding at all. From tree stumps that spy, to whispering pistols, to invisible ink, World War II weapons reveals the ingenious, bizarre, and deadly innovations that won the war. Subscribe now for more untold stories of the secret weapons that changed history. The next revelation might be hiding in plain sight.